Was easier.
Oh. Talk again, Jim? Or Jen, go on mute. Are you muted? We're okay? Okay. Thank you. The Newton Planning Board would like to hold a public meeting on Tuesday, June 27th, 2023, beginning at 7:05 at the Newton Town Hall. First thing I would like to do is salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Ms. Burke is not with us tonight, but we have 4 members present on the planning board present, I should say, wow. And then we have Ms. White and Mrs. Eddy online. So the first hearing we have tonight is John Silver and Ashley Guerrero, thank you. Request a public hearing for a non-retail home-based business consulting at 41 Highland Avenue, Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as tax map 5, block 4, lot 20. And then, Jen, do you have any comments about this application?
The application appears complete. It appears to conform with your home occupation. A couple of questions, just ensuring that vehicles match the weight limits, everything will be stored inside. The application alludes to that, but I would let the applicant speak for himself.
Perfect.
John Sylvia, 41 Highland Street. Yeah, essentially it's just an office. That's it. It's all plan review, consulting. Anything that is done physically is done on a job site out of New Hampshire in Massachusetts. It's really just following the rules and making sure that, you know, I can legitimately get business mail to my address. No materials. It's my own vehicle. It's just a little SUV that's being used for the business. No customers at my house. No sign out front. Nothing of the sort. Just registering with the state and making sure that I have an address that I can receive mail to.
Awesome. Jen?
Just for folks who maybe didn't see the application, can you just describe what your business is?
Yeah, so I have 20 plus years of MEP, so that's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. My current job occupation is to review plans, visit job sites, and make sure that the stuff that the engineers draw on paper and gets put in buildings will A, actually work, and B, is installed correctly. So that's pretty much what I do. I'm basically a glorified babysitter for all the mechanical trades.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Do we have to
You
take
have to take jurisdiction if you're ready.
Can I make a motion to take jurisdiction?
Second.
Can I have a motion?
Make a motion that the board takes jurisdiction.
Second.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. And before I continue, is there any more questions or any questions from the public? Can you please just step up and say your name and your address, please?
You can pull it right down.
Sandra Estabrook, 7 New Boston Road. I was just wondering if the office, how much space it's going to take up and if it's in the house or in the barn area. The barn has a discretionary preservation easement on it, so I don't know if that affects that.
So the exact square footage was actually not given, but it is on the sketch. It's a small portion of the home. It doesn't look like it's in the accessory dwelling.
Do you have anything to add to that?
That's correct. It's a desk in a little 10 by 10 sunroom on my second floor.
Thank you. Any other questions for the public or online? How about any more from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Just, I would recommend you
Finding
go
of
with
fact? Yes.
that the findings of fact are that they match your home occupation requirements and that the application be able to continue the business as proposed in their application.
I was just getting there.
Okay,
I have a lot of paperwork over here, this
that's fair.
meeting. The board found the facts concerning for the application that the business plan falls within the scope of the applicable zoning and site plan regulations for a non-retail home-based business, and that justice would be served by approving the application. The proposed conditions are, we obtained a Newton business occupancy permit, and conditions ongoing will be no outdoor storage of business-related materials. All business shall take place inside the home or off-site, and hours of operation shall not detract from the quality of the neighborhood.
And Mr. Ryan seconded it before Mr. Marchand stated all the conditions, but
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Eddy?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvia. Have a good night.
Next on the agenda tonight is Mr. Ryan Norman of Newton, New Hampshire requests a design review for a 7-lot subdivision of 17 Thornell Road in Newton, New Hampshire. The properties are referenced as tax map 12, block 1, lots 4 and 4-3. Ms. Rowden, can you, in addition to providing some of your typical review comments, can you please kind of bring us up to speed of what a design review is?
Yep, so a design review does require an application to the planning board, although it is not a formal application. Abutters are noticed. None of the discussion this evening is binding, so the board can provide feedback to the applicant. The applicant can propose what they are seeking to do to get feedback from both the board and abutters, but nothing is binding. Nothing that they present this evening makes that is what they have to present on a formal application should they choose to go through with one. The board can be supportive of aspects or not supportive. It doesn't really matter. When at that stage, they can come back at a future point and have listened to you or not. So any comments tonight really are just for advisory. It gives a sense of things that you may have concerns about, so it's good for the board to give that kind of feedback, ask questions, give some commentary, but it is really just a non-binding discussion. It is a more formal of a sketch than a preliminary consultation, which you typically have more of a rough sketch than more formal plans like you have this evening. I would recommend on this one, though, it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. Mr. Quintel has forwarded to me as of yesterday sort of a way of stepping through that process, and I think you have copies, and I'll project it on the screen for those online, but I think that would be very helpful. I have a few other questions, and I'm sure the board may as well, and abutters, but I think let's go through the process of what they're trying to do before we get into the, we'll say, more complicated details. I think that might be
Okay,
helpful.
Mr. Quintel,
Good evening. Sorry, Mr. Ryan.
pull the mic.
Mr. Ryan was not able to be here tonight because of scheduled vacation time. So we had scheduled for the previous meeting with the board here, but I wasn't going to be around. So he thought it would be important that I make the presentation because of the type of project that there is and the calculations and so on. So his property is on Thornell Road, which is tax map 12, block 1, lots 4 and 4-3. He purchased this property by deed 6407, page 1834. And lot 43 is an existing house lot. It's 0.97 acres. You might have seen it if you go by. It's been vacant for a while, and he's had a sign in front of that property that says Norman Builders. Behind that house, there is backland that has an access of a 50-foot right-of-way that goes to the right of that existing house. That's lot 4, and it's about 27 acres there. So the land, even behind that, there's, is shown on the tax map, there's a 4.5 or 4.7 acre landlocked piece of property, a rectangular piece that's owned by the town. And it's in his property kind of wraps around it according to the tax map, and I have a copy of the tax map if you want to look at it. But he looked at it from the point of view that it would make it a better project for him if he was to wind up purchasing that property from the town. And so he's met a number of times with the selectmen and came up with an agreement, and a deed has been written to transfer that property to him. But there are conditions with that, which we can go into a little later. So the first step, which part of the one of the conditions, is to provide conservation land for the town. And so the plan set that I sent with my application shows a lot line adjustment plan. And that lot line adjustment plan shows a line that goes basically from the like over an acre or so of the town piece, and kind of intersects that parcel, and it draws a straight line. So the goal here is to create this line, which would then wind up parcel A of the town property, which would be 3.4 acres. And you can see it right there, actually. I can probably point at it a little bit better if I can find my pointer. And Jen, you're probably doing that for me anyways, aren't you?
Yep.
This is the 4.7 acre parcel. And so what we're doing is creating this lot line down through here, which is kind of like the plan that Mr. Norman was proposing to the selectmen, of creating this as a property that the town would own, conservation land, and this would be parcel A, would be land that he could utilize and part of his property. So that's that. So parcel A would be, of the town piece, would go to Mr. Norman, 3.4 acres, and parcel B would go to the town, which is about 7.6 acres. There's also a deeded easement. There's also going to be a deeded easement or plan adjustment in order for walking trails. And there's existing walking trails throughout the whole property here, but there's also an access from Diane Hurd's property. And I show where that there's existing trail system through this property. And we talked, and I met with her, and we walked her property, but her property comes in more down slope and kind of through some wet area through here. So I talked to her about perhaps maybe instead of making this line here, making it somewhere in between an upland area. So that's something we have to work on. But anyways, the goal here is to provide a walking trail from her property here as an abutter through the conservation land here and through Norman property and reached into the trail system that's out in this area. So how we do that is something we're going to work on, because perhaps we can take, instead of this being a straight line, we might be able to make some bending into this line and get the trail system to go through, so it's not an easement through the property, but it would be on part of the conservation land itself. Because as you can see, the wetland line comes right down through here like this, so that's edge of wetland right through here. So they're really, the walking trail should be out of the wetlands as much as possible into the uplands, and then through the best part of this upland, this wetland piece, the higher than where it is now. So we're going to work on that. So it's a little hard to explain that, but that's basically what we need to do as far as that condition of the deed. So the resulting property that Mr. Norman has is 20.5 acres. So the next step after we do this lot line adjustment is to look at a proposed development for Mr. Norman's property. Initially, Mr. Norman was hoping to obtain 3 or 4 lots for himself and his family, and we wound up, at that point in time, we needed to obtain information of the physical features on the site. So we contacted Gove Environmental to flag the edge of wetlands through here, and we conducted a topographic survey of the property, and they then were able to do a high-intensity soil map, which is one thing that the town requires for development purposes. And so that's what we did to begin with. So the upland soils are very good, and there's a wide band of wetlands that goes through this property here. Edge of wetlands marked there and here, so there's quite a 200 or 300 feet, 250 to 300 feet to cross this wetland area. It's on a slope, but it is keyed out as a poorly drained soil. So looking at it from a development point of view, we first looked at an access road that would come off from Thornell Road, and that would be right beside the existing house. The 50-foot right-of-way that's in this area here, we kind of had to move where the proposed road was going to go, because looking at the topographic information that we got from the Thornell Road, we couldn't quite get 400-foot distance unless we moved the road a little bit westerly. So that's why it looks like it doesn't follow that 50-foot right-of-way. It kind of goes a little bit westerly as far as that goes. So we were trying to meet town requirements as much as possible, and so that's where we proposed to put that entrance in, coming off of Thornell Road. And that way there, we would be able to meet the 400-foot sight distance in either direction. The road does need to cross wetlands in the minimum distance as much as possible to access the rear of the lot. So I developed a subdivision, conventional subdivision plan that does not include the town parcel A, which was deeded to him, but one of the conditions was that it couldn't be used as calculations for proposed development. So we took a look at it and to see what we could do for a road that would come in and provide 150 feet of frontage for each lot, 150 feet of frontage for each lot as we came around, and we got 6 lots. Each of these lots has the minimum land area and plenty of room for septics and wells, and they will all meet the requirements for high-intensity soil map as well. It's going to require 914 plus or minus linear feet of road, and again, all of these are just calculations that I've done as a preliminary basis to meet in this design review process, and obviously have to fine tune it as time goes on. So some of these lines might change a little bit, but essentially right now it does meet the requirements. So once we did that, and I think I provided you with a copy of that plan, we took a look at the possibility of doing an open space cluster development, which is part of zoning section 31, I believe. And it requires a conditional use permit from the planning board. So we know we have to go through that process of a conditional use permit. And we can go into that too if we go to the next level here. It requires lot size of at least 20 acres, which we have over 20 acres. And it requires 150 feet of frontage. And we have over 200 feet of frontage across his property here, the lot and the backland. So there's over 200 feet of frontage on Thornell Road. So I think it does meet the requirement for the cluster open space development. One of the next items that we took a look at for getting, see if we can meet this requirement for open space is subsection 7, which is a baseline density. It's called a baseline density. And with that, there's two options, which we have a choice of choosing which option to wind up determining the number of units, the number of lots to put on a cluster. And so the yield plan, as you see that I've sent to you, shows 6 new lots. That's option B. Option A, in looking at option A, is some calculations, and I provided you with that sheet today that shows you that the 20.5 acre lot, you cannot use the house lot, or the house lot, which is 9.97, or the town piece, parcel A, which is that 3.43. So that reduces the land area to 16.1 acres usable for calculations. And based on that, we cannot utilize unbuildable land. So we have to take away the wetlands and the gas easement, which are the wetlands is 4.98 acres, and the gas line easement, which is the natural gas line that goes through the property, that's 0.9 acres. So we have to take those out, and it winds up with 10.14 acres, or 10.14 acres of usable land that we can use for calculation. So if we take that 10.14 acres and we have to discount 10% for roads, I'm not making this stuff up, this is in your regulations. So I mean, if you follow through the town regulations, I think that this is what I'm trying to get through.
Yeah, I will verify, I did walk through the calculations, and based on what I have, it checks out with your regulations. I know there's other things, but.
I just need to say that I'm just not coming up with these out of my head. But so taking away 10% for roads, or multiplying the 10.14 times 0.9, gives us 9.126 acres of usable land for calculation. And then your regulations say that has to be divided by what the zoning requirements are for area, which is 60,000 square feet. So we divide that by 60,000 square feet, and we wind up with 6.6 units. And according to your regulations, that can be rounded up to 7 units. So that's where I came up with 7 new proposed lots. And so that's shown on the plan that shows the 7.7 lots along the road that comes in, and the proposed road would wind up being 700 feet, about 775 feet as a reduced road, and each lot would then have 75 feet of frontage and each lot would be greater than 50,000 square feet, located around a proposed cul-de-sac that, like I said, the road would be 773 feet. And each lot has plenty land enough for, as you can see here, septic system, well, septic system, and wells in the back. So each of them do meet the requirements for each having their own lot. Plenty of land for each to utilize. All the soils are good up there. They meet the soil type requirements for the state, for the town and the state, for the high intensity requirements, and also the state requirements. So one of the next things that we took a look at on doing a cluster, if we were going to do this cluster, is the minimum requirements for open space. So again, going through your calculations, it requires 40% of the area minus the unbuildable to get how much open space we need. So that's the area that was left after we took away the unbuildable, the wetlands and the gas line from above. And so we multiply 10 acres times 0.4, and we get 4.06 acres that are required for open space. And so on each side of the development, each side of the development parcel, the one above, there you go, to the right now. There you go. So open space here, I call it to the west side open space. This over here is east side open space. Now, a majority of the west side is wetlands, but there is areas around that can work around with trail systems, just like we talked about. On the east side, there's a lot of this is upland, and there's pockets of wetland over this way. And if you take a look at the one down just below it here, okay, so there's some wetland here on the east side, but you can access it through upland all the way around here. And then as far as the next step, as far as that requirement, was to have 25% of the open space, of the 4 acres of open space, to be usable for recreation. So when we add the west side of the road and the east side of the road, we come up with 8.4 acres. So we have more than the 4, which is required. And then the usable area, if we take 25% of the 4 acres, it winds up being just over 1 acre, so 44,000 square feet. It has to be shown as usable for recreational purposes. And just this area right in here, that's over 60,000 square feet. So there's usable land. I wanted to summarize it down here. There's almost 60,000 here. There's 14,000 there, and about 25,000. So there's areas here that can be used for recreation. Now, it doesn't say what type of recreation. It could be archery. It could be, maybe a soccer field, or it could be a small baseball field or something like that in this opened area. It doesn't say what, but it's upland that can be used for recreational purposes. The access, like I said, would be from the road through the upland area south of Lot 7. So, regarding the access roadway, the roadway has to cross the 300 feet of wetlands, which is the narrowest point. And on one of the plans that I sent to you has a road cross-section, or profile, I mean. And I don't know, that's the one right there. So looking at that, we're looking at the grading scheme here coming in. This is the area that's about 300 feet, which is just over 200 Station 200 there up to just over 500. So it's just about 300 feet of wetland crossing. And we need to try to make the minimum impact to wetlands as possible in order to get a permit. And so that's what we've kind of tried to do there. And so I took a look at, you know, what a grading scheme would look like as a minimum. And down here is the profile of the road starting in from Thornell Road. If we come in, I started out with this plan here, coming in 25 feet at a 2% slope, and then a gradual vertical curve, and wind up being, at that point in time, about a 10% slope, and then another vertical curve coming this way to a low point, and then coming back up into more of a cut situation just at the end of the cul-de-sac. So this whole area would require fill of the proposed grade. So there's the 10% grade. So there'd be quite a bit of fill in this area. Most of it would be, probably be 8 feet of fill there, and down to 5 to 6 feet of fill down to where the culvert is. So looking at that, and now looking at what your town requirements are, we would need to obtain waivers from that design in order to minimize the impacts to the wetlands. And also, if we have to modify the plan, we certainly can. So I did also, in one of my emails, I did say that we would need to have a waiver, 4 waivers, one for the design standards, criteria 1.7. Grading within 100 feet of the intersection does not exceed 1%. So that first coming in off of Thornell Road would have to be, we're proposing 25 feet in order to start in to give a fairly flat area before it starts to 50-foot vertical curve to start to drop into the project. And so instead of 100 feet flat, we're looking at proposing to do 25 feet fairly flat, then transitioning with a 50-foot vertical curve on that. So we need a waiver from that requirement. Number 2, the road requirement criteria 2.4C, minimum paved width. So since this is going to be looking at this and requiring these waivers, we're probably looking at this to be a private road instead of a town road, because there's only, you know, going to be the 7 lots that go back in and out. So instead of having 24 feet of pavement, to minimize the amount of fill that's going to be required to impacts to the wetlands, we'd like to reduce the pavement width to 20 feet of pavement. And so that would be the waiver for that section. Instead of 24 feet of pavement, would wind up with 20 feet of pavement. And the third waiver would be shoulder gravel, instead of 4 feet wide, would be 2 feet wide on each side. And the reason, similar to the previous waiver, which is minimizing the width of the building for the road. The last waiver would be 2.4C, is the maximum grade of a roadway is supposed to be 8%, and we show a 10% grade coming in for that short section of roadway right here. So if we were to go flat for 100 feet and then go at 8%, we're talking about, you know, maybe 12, 14 feet of fill to get over the wetlands and make that work. So it's a little challenging. Again, this isn't cast in stone. I did meet with Mike Vignali, town engineer, about this. He said he was going to give comments to the board. I don't know if he did, but if he didn't, then he probably will when we submit this again to the, if we go through with this. But he didn't really see any major problems with this. A lot of towns, he said, a lot of towns have a maximum grade of 10% anyways. So going from 8% to 10%, he didn't think was a big deal. This flatter area in the front, I'll have to take a look at that a little bit more. Maybe I can make that a little bit longer. and see what the impact is down here. Again, I haven't gone through this a number of iterations like you can on a design to see what the best is. So I'm looking at trying to send this plan into the town and then get feedback. And when talking to Mike Vignali, he kind of thought that I might be able to do a little bit more here. I also met with Mike Pavero, the town engineer, and he doesn't have any problem with this design as long as it's a private road. And he said, if it's going to be a town road, he says, I got enough town roads to work on now, and with the budget I have, it's difficult to maintain the existing town roads, so I'm not really looking for any more town roads. And so he said, if it's a private road, he says, you do what you want to do, but he says, if it's going to be a town road, he says, I really wouldn't support any waivers because I have to then go and maintain it and plow it and whatnot. So he would like to have it, you know, bigger and flatter and make it easier to maintain. So I'm looking at it from the point of view of environmentally what we need to do to make this work, and also to make it usable and safe for traffic. So in meeting with these two gentlemen, I did get some feedback and can take a look at manipulating this somewhat as best I can. And so that kind of summarizes what we need to do for this design review. I know there's a number of calculations here, but I think that I needed to go through that and be able to present that to you now. I think that that's what was important as a design review. So you have some sort of a feel for where I'm coming from and trying to come up with a development plan. Like I said, he would like to proceed further on trying to get a design going sometime in the future. So I would need to have some time to do some more calculations. So I guess with that, I can answer any questions, or any feedback would certainly be helpful.
It actually might help, Dennis, if you went through your steps of what needs to occur just for the board's edification and anybody watching or here.
Go through the what?
The steps that you had emailed to me as far as the approvals that would need to happen for these plans to come to fruition.
So we would have to do a conditional use permit.
Yes, you'd also need to do a lot line adjustment.
Right, the
as
lot
a
line
prep.
adjustment
Yep.
first would be the plan, but I wanted to work out that path, walking path through the woods, so that's something I gotta work out. So the first step would be to do a lot line adjustment plan, present that to the board at the same time with the subdivision plans, and then, you know, if the lot line adjustment gets approved, then we can walk right into doing the subdivision plans. But I've got drainage calculations I got to do to size the culvert for the roadway. I've got the wetland application that's got to go in for dredge and fill permit. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done. So I won't be back at your next meeting. So, but I just, for design review purposes, I think this is the process that needs to be gone through, and at least give you a feel for what's happening. Any other comments from other town entities, conservation, recreation, anybody else, then certainly I'm willing to answer any questions or consider any other changes.
So I did go through the calculations that Dennis presented. I mean, it does follow the formulaic requirements of your cluster subdivision. I do strongly advise that you go get the fire chief's input for fire apparatus and the road design, in case the grade or the width in particular are of concern. I don't think they will be, but it's always good to get that feedback early on.
Down there somewhere.
You know, it is a long wetland crossing. There's no other way to access it, so that I think would be good to seek some Conservation Commission feedback on ahead of time. Those are my two main comments.
Yeah, that was the coordination or input before you go too far with the fire department. You may want that. That may change your plans, is my gut. But I'm not going to talk to the fire department.
Just across the street, there was recently a single family home that was built, and it was basically a 10% slope all the way up. And it was a long 10% slope, the whole length of the road. And when I talked to him about it, because it needed to have fire apparatus to be able to get up in and turn around. And so I did go over that with him. This, I don't believe, is as drastic, but it's going to be a private road instead of, it would serve number of houses instead
I
of one.
think that's where you're gonna trip.
So I certainly will talk to him. He's not that far away from where I do some of my
like-
work, so.
1,000 feet, maybe.
So, yeah, I certainly will talk to him.
Are there any other comments from the board?
I'd like to hear from the public first.
Barbara and Emily, do you have anything? I know Bob says he wants to hear from the public, but I was just gonna offer it up, but
No, I'm just listening to information right now. Thank you.
thanks. Anybody from the
I'm all
public?
set for right now.
Yes, sir.
My name's Jeffrey Goucher. I live at number 11 Thornell Road. I do have a few concerns about this property, especially with the town swapped properties. What they swap for is it's absolutely useless as far as recreation or anything. There's streams, there's beaver ponds, there's cranberry bogs, it's just completely wet. And from the two pipelines, it's all like stream and vernal pools in behind the houses. So if they come to this crossing of the wetland, if it's not properly drained right, it's gonna back up in behind everybody's houses and cause some issues there as well. And I have two wells. One's probably 100 feet away from the property line, and the other one's probably 150 feet. So that's a concern of mine as well. And the only other thing that I can think of is the trail they're talking about. That is actually only a footpath that these people use to go on other people's property. I don't understand why they're gonna create that trail just for them. And there are several other trails that actually a lot of other people do use behind there. So my biggest concern is holding that water back in behind people's houses. You know, there's endangered turtles back there. I think the Conservation Committee should take a good hard look at this. Other than that,
So just as part of this approval, they will have to submit a stormwater drainage plan that has to, per your town requirements and state requirements, they basically can't have any additional flow off of the property than naturally exists to help deal with your concern. Still have your concern, but
Right.
that the intention
Yeah.
is to not cause additional impacts on other people's properties.
I don't know how they can
Yep.
put drainage into a vernal pool, but anyway, those are a few of my concerns at the moment. Other than the usual, the police department, fire department, the school system, all those things are gonna be affected as well, so.
And just for you know that the trail that you're talking about, the footpath, that Diane here had talked to them about, it's not just for her primary use. Her concern is her and her husband love nature.
Yeah.
They love all of that, and they want to keep it open for the public. That was why they got involved in all of that and wanted that part to be open so that people that do the peanut trail can come off onto that property as well and walk up through there and be able to enjoy the
Okay, and how would they access that?
environment. You can access it right off the peanut trail and it goes right up through there.
Yeah, I know that place like the
Yeah,
back of my hand,
so-
so they're gonna leave a lot open from the peanut trail for public use, is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
that's what part of that property that he's
Yeah.
given to the town. The part of it's wetlands and part of it's where that trail goes up beside it, so that you.
So it
people-
essentially will just go up towards the back of their house and dead end, and then you just turn around and walk back, correct?
Yeah, you would just be able to follow it up and.
Yeah, so you'd be walking along the swamp, and nice
Yeah,
to see and
and
stuff. but-
there's a lot of, from what I understand, a lot of wildlife that's up in there.
Yeah, like I said, there's endangered turtles out there as well, spotted turtles.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody wants to come down, they're welcome to come on my property, and I'll take you for a walk back behind you. Like I say, I know that like the back of my hand, so
Yeah, I've
there's a
been
lot to
there.
see out there.
I went for a walk with them when we were selling the property.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to put that out to everybody,
Okay.
that that property will be for public use.
okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Al Woodruff, 5 Thornell. I guess one of my principal concerns, although I'm sure you have competent staff, is the safety. The hill on Thornell Road, which you'll be cresting where that private hill is, and the maintenance of that private road under adverse conditions and emergency services. And I want to make sure that that's well considered, because otherwise you'll have somebody coming over the top of that hill, somebody trying to pull out and have a major collision. Beyond that, I think everything is pretty well described and clear. As far as the update and the plot updates, to my understanding, I haven't seen this. Is there a PDF online or someplace I could access to keep abreast? Is it posted online?
Yep,
Okay.
they're posted on the
It's,
planning board's
yeah, the-
website. on the
Okay, it
town
looked
website.
earlier today, I didn't see it, so maybe I just didn't punch the right spot. But the peanut trail is still staying intact, and that is basically the border. And so I guess it would be the south side of it is where the development is.
Yep,
Okay. All right, very good, thank you.
yep.
I just wanted for abutters that if they were to come back with a formal application, if you got noticed on today's hearing, you would get notice of that formal application as well.
Hi, Andrew Whitty at 5 Terra Lane. So we actually abut just north. We have property sticks out. I only wanted to reiterate what I think they both have also said is the impact to the wells in the area. So we just bought back in June, and talking to all the neighbors in the area, everybody seems to be running out of water in that drought, that September, August drought that we all kind of get. Everybody seems to be getting in town. So my only concern is I know it's all wetlands, but we know that doesn't necessarily affect your well systems. So with 7 more wells, especially the way he has it on the second division where they're all even plots, where they all circle kind of right along the back. I just don't know if there's a way to get an impact or see how that's gonna affect everybody else's well in the area, if it's gonna draw the table down and kind of mess everybody up. But just wanna make sure that's kind of on top of, I know nobody wants to see more woods getting torn down, but you can't really stop progress. But just, like I said, the water is probably everybody's biggest concern back there, I think. But other than that, like I said, it seems pretty well described and a pretty good layout, besides obviously the concerns with the road.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman, can you
Yep.
pause for a few minutes because Zoom crashed?
Oh.
It kicked me out too.
That's actually like surprising that this is the first time it's happened since I've
It
been
should
on the
be
board.
Pretty good.
Which, I'm actually checking the website for you right now. That's what I'm playing on my phone.
Flappy Bird.
I'm trying to find it. I probably should know where it is, but
If you go to the Newtontown website and you go to planning board,
it is on there, yep.
it is listed on the website. So, and as new information comes in, it gets posted. Yep.
And you have to go into like boards and committees. We're not government side, so it appears to be on there now. I don't know what time it was uploaded though.
It's been up there for 2 weeks.
No.
The stuff that was handed out this evening is not up there.
Yep.
Okay, everybody seems to be back.
Okay. Is anybody else from the public? I can see Trish is nodding her head. You can speak on behalf of the public, or your opinion.
Hi, I'm Norm Huntress, 19 Thornell Road, and I was just wondering what the plans were for the property next door. I noticed the wires are cut on the house. Is the house going to be moved, or is it going to be, done over, or?
I don't quite understand your question, maybe.
The existing house.
The existing house, okay.
Existing house that's,
Mr. Quintel could probably potentially answer that question.
It's my understanding from Mr. Norman that he was going to demolish the house and redo it. There were some structural problems with the house that he figures is worth redoing it. And so when we do that, we have to take a look at the setback requirements, number one. Number two, we also will probably look at the land area for that lot, because it's 0.97 acres. So what we'd like to do is make that a little bit bigger. So on one of the plans, you can see maybe that I added more land around the back of that as a change as well. I don't know if that's going to be considered a part of the lot line adjustment, because we're changing that lot line as well.
That's wetland.
So perhaps that would be on the lot line adjustment plan. But I wouldn't want that extra land to be taken away from the design criteria for coming up with the option A. But anyways, we can talk about that further. But there's that aspect, and the other aspect of this is, I didn't mention, is the new road that we would be proposing to go in there. It would wind up in a situation where instead of having the existing house driveway come in off of Thornell, we'd do away with that driveway, and the driveway for that house would then come off the proposed road. And the property to the right-hand side, to the west, already has a driveway that's in the easement coming off of Thornell. So we would propose changing that driveway to come off the town road, the proposed road, the private road as well. So there would be two driveways that would be coming off of Thornell Road and creating one private road that would be. So that's the other part, that in talking to Mike Vignali, he thought that was probably a good idea to do it that way and minimize the driveways that come out onto Thornell, which is what the town has to maintain. So I don't know, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience?
I'll start. This is maybe to clarify a few things that I've heard. The walking trail is something, what? Oh, I'm Trish McCarthy. I'm conservation, but also emergency management, so there's a piece here to do with the fire department, because I did talk to the fire chief. But let me start with conservation. The idea of the trail, just so that you know, the walking trail, conservation has been working with other landowners in that area, and we eventually are going to have this easement that will connect to multiple properties way up in the back. So hopefully that explains why we were very interested with Diane's proposal about the trail that's already being used. That's number one. Number two, conservation. Whoever mentioned the turtles, yep. A year ago when we sat here, or the selectmen meeting with Mr. Norman, we discussed the Blandings turtle and the spotted turtle, so we're fully aware of that and have been paying attention to that. In addition to the wetlands, the crossings, we understand there's going to be a crossing, and the hope is that it will be minimal, but by the same token, and this is coming from Diane, one of the abutters, and maybe these abutters behind me as well, we want to make sure that on either side of the driveway, the swales are large enough to take any water, so that neighbors aren't, their topography isn't turning into flooded areas. So we're all working on that. I've talked to Dennis, we've talked to Ryan, we've done a zillion site walks down there, so we're all aware of the topography on that property. And from the fire department thing, Sandy's going to talk more in conservation, but from the fire department, he was curious and we didn't have the regulations right in front of us, how long the road was going to be, which would indicate whether or not the houses were sprinklered, and wide enough for trucks and a turnaround or a pull-off area. One of my firefighters is here, so he knows what I'm talking about. So that is a concern, but Dennis, like you said, he's 1,000 feet away from us. He can come over and talk to the fire chief. Sandy?
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Sandra Estabrook. I'm also the chairman of Conservation. So, to me, it seems like this is 4 lots that are being combined. So it seems like it's more than a lot line adjustment, because there's several lines being adjusted, and there's several things being combined. So I'm not really sure a lot line adjustment is the proper term. Maybe you should look into a merger of lots, then they could be subdivided into whatever they think they want to do. That small acre on the tax map, it says there's only 40 feet of frontage to that lot, not 50 as they said. Then, like he said, if the application does come in as open space / cluster, there's all those requirements that you have to put in place. There is some things about the new road, and then there's it's supposed to be 150-foot frontage. So if those lots only have 40 feet, he said he's going to have 196 feet or 200 feet. So to me, it sounds like he's combining the existing house. Then they talk about raising the existing house. So I think those are some questions they should ask or fill in when they do come back. As far as that wetland that they propose to give the town or ease to the town, the plan doesn't show the railroad track that was submitted. It should be a 200-foot on the plan. So that plan, I can't really tell where the railroad track comes in. I'm not sure if that land does abut the railroad track. So where they would put that walking easement into that wetland. And then if it doesn't abut there, I'm not sure, giving us a landlocked piece of land.
It doesn't abut
Yeah.
the trail. My property goes
Yeah.
all the way across.
Right, so giving us a landlocked piece of land isn't gonna help either. So that's a little question to look into.
I didn't quite catch that piece or that comment.
Yeah, they're proposing to possibly give the town all that wetland on the left side, and then the easement, he said that the other property owner giving us an easement to come in there, but I wouldn't think the town would want to be given a landlocked piece of land. Because what if that other person doesn't want to give us any easement? So, and then they said they were talking to the selectmen about that piece of land, or are they talking to conservation? Did we have any input? Because he said that has to be worked out first about that piece. So I don't know if we can probably give some input for that.
That parcel B. Yes, that was already decided a year ago, Bob,
Yeah.
with the Board of Selectmen.
So that's already was part of the purchase and sales agreement when Mr. Norman bought that property.
That he's gonna give us
So
that wetland?
that goes back to when you first started talking about the lot line adjustments, all right? They have, from the point of when he purchased that, 18 months to do a lot line adjustment for that purpose. Nothing to do with any of the lots that he's gonna do. That's the lot line adjustment that he's talking about that has to take place first. He has to do that about the wetlands, about the trail that was promised to be able to access all that land over there so that the public can use it and come and go. And,
So it's like a multi-step
Right.
exactly.
process.
So that'll be done, and then, like he said, then he was hoping to do that, and then he would move forward with the other part of it. But he's gonna figure out, along with the abutter and stuff, and where they could not have the trail right up on the wetlands, but have dry land alongside it to be able to use, to be able to access all that property.
So does the town have any input in that, where that trail goes? Like, I was talking to selectmen now, or conservation, or just the abutter?
Well, in theory, he's supposed to, when we talked about it already, that it's supposed to go, just like he was talking about, off of the wetland so many feet, and then be able to come up off the trail, so he will have to adjust that with the lot line, and that's what he's looking to do.
Because his lot does not meet our peanut trail? Doesn't abut to the peanut trail?
It does. This back here, it already comes onto the peanut trail, but as you come up, further up, that's when all of a sudden, that's when, boom, you hit total wetlands.
Right.
So that trail that he's gonna give comes off of the wetlands to be able to access it to go up.
Okay. So then.
So the goal is to get a connection from the peanut trail
Correct.
through proposed or new town-owned land based on a lot line that is, Mr. Quintel drew roughly, that may be shifted to accommodate the trail, to then Diane, and I don't, apologize, I don't know Diane's last name.
Yeah, here, yeah.
It's gonna have to be because it's not usable for a trail that the town acquired from this guy, because it's complete swamp.
So the goal is to get a trail from the peanut trail all the way to their property,
So, right,
continuous.
so if the selectmen have input in that, because I think then the town attorney has to agree with that verbiage before it goes into.
It's already been agreed to the terms of the land swap, which is what you approved about a
Yes,
year ago.
it's already in the purchase and sales agreement
Right.
that Mr. Ryan signed. We had town council and his lawyers work together for the verbiage on it, and that's what they're gonna end up doing.
So the public had no say in that swamp?
What's that?
The public had no say in that swamp?
They did.
Yeah, we had a couple of conservation had some too, yeah. All right, so that was my big concern about it. I think it's bigger than a lot line adjustment, and then there's a lot, like I said, a lot of things going on. They're gonna raise that house, that 150 feet, they only have 40 feet now, so they must be, they said he's pushing into where they're gonna raise that house for the road to access in there. So to me, you're combining more properties, so,
Jen, do you have,
like that.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the lot line adjustment will be one step, and it's a lot line adjustment because you're changing the property line between two property owners, basically. There are going to be multiple of those. That's why they can't do just a lot merger, because that would be the same property owner. So they're going to shift property configuration, and then their goal through the the cluster subdivision is to then create new lots. So it will be two separate applications, but the lots need to be adjusted
Yes.
before they can do the cluster subdivision.
So they'll do a second lot line adjustment then to get rid of the existing lot the house is on, because they're gonna push into that.
They are going to shift how the lot that has the house on it, the shape of it, they are potentially going to shift that.
So it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot now.
Yes.
So you have to do certain things.
so the goal is to potentially, this is all speculative, potentially fix that lot, give the town a lot that they've already purchased, but in an effort to make sure that a proposed subdivision, if it has 6 lots, 4 lots, 2 lots, I don't know, works, they want to make sure the lot that is going to be given to the town for conservation works with their proposed subdivision, so they don't have a 1/4 of an acre too much for a calculation with the cluster. So they want to make sure that whatever lot line orientation they pick, they don't grab too much wetlands here, not enough wetlands there, to make sure it fits our regulations.
All right, and then in the other thing, if it does come out as an open space cluster development, it's to help protect the land that we already have and to have more houses, but preserve land. And it does say that the town can go out and look, and if there's trees that look nice or historical fixtures or stone walls, stuff like that, that would help to keep the look of the land, that possibly we could put those as conditions to make it look nicer and not just go clear cut it and have it all open, because the conservation walked out there, the town piece, we went out there with Mr. Norman, and it's a beautiful piece of land, and there's a lot of nice old growth trees there, oak trees, all kinds of trees. We saw a scarlet tanager out there, which is very hard to find in the town. So there's a lot of wildlife that are using that acreage that the town sold or whatever to him. So it'd be nice if you took that into consideration.
Can you,
Well, can I, if I may, also, part of the quitclaim deed that Mr. Ryan signed, subject to a restrictive covenant that the grantee and the grantee's heirs, executors, administrators, and assigned shall not remove more than 60% of the vegetation on the premises herein conveyed. And that's just on the property that he purchased from the town. So he's got to leave at least 40% of that standing.
That's an easement from before, that's what you guys had him put in there, or was that a?
that's a
old easement?
deed requirement.
Requirement, yeah.
Part of, yeah,
Right.
part of the property. So if he cuts, that was because he had said that he wanted to build some of the houses there. So part of that was that he was gonna at least leave 40% of, not what he's given the town, but that property that he's owning, right, what was left of it, 40% of that has to remain standing.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, probably I'll be back when they send the plan.
And I'm guessing you're going to describe the reason for cluster developments?
Well, yeah, I mean, the general purpose of a cluster development is to try to retain as much natural space, open space, forested land. But in addition, if and when they do come with the cluster subdivision, so the house lots, they'll have to show other natural features. They've shown wetlands on here because they needed that for doing some of these calculations, but tree lines, exemplary tree, individual trees, stone walls, ledge, if there's other natural features. So if there is a lot of that, there's a really particular tree, there's a pocket of trees, the planning board has the ability through your cluster subdivision to help guide that.
And we would solicit feedback from the Concom.
Yep. So not everything that is out there is currently indicated on the plans that they've proposed it.
And I don't know if this will help, but one of the gentlemen mentioned, you know, it's all wet, what do we care about? You can't even walk there. One of the first conversations that we had with Mr. Norman was that the wetlands that we are now going to be, the town's going to own, is a large amount of it is an Atlantic white cedar swamp, which is rare. If any of you have walked the Peanut Trail, the other side of the Peanut Trail, we've lost that. The Atlantic white cedar swamp is annihilated, and we have spent countless hours of our own time and money. We've done beaver deceivers, pond levelers, we've gotten soaked. It's amazing, and the Atlantic white cedar swamp didn't survive. So part of our hope was maybe now that we own the property, because we couldn't spend our own money on that wetlands as long as somebody else owned it. It has to be town-owned for us to spend town money. And now we can maintain it, so we can do what we need to do, whether it's another pond leveler, beaver deceiver, whatever, and hopes of protecting that Atlantic white cedar swamp. And the other part of this trail that Dennis Quintel talked about is the wetlands. The idea, when we all did our site walk and Mr. Norman was there and Diane came, it was publicized, anyone could have come. Part of the promise that Ryan Norman stated was that part of the uplands, the piece that is at the closest side to the Peanut Trail that's dry, part of that, a piece of that, is going to be how we can get to the Peanut Trail, so we don't have to put on our hip waders and walk through the wetlands. So we are working on, there's a lot of moving pieces, as Jennifer said, and we're aware of it, but anytime, even abutters, if you're interested, conservation posts publicly, all this conversations that we've had for planning board and the Board of Selectmen has been public. Please feel free to come or zoom in. If it's selectmen, you can zoom in. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
I have one more question. This could be a stupid question, I don't know. Do you need permits to cross wetlands for a foot trail?
Oh, yeah.
You do, okay. For a foot trail?
No.
Because we'll be walking across it, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll do footbridges or something.
Yeah.
We'll work with Boy Scouts, but
I was studying all day. In the subdivision regulations, it's on page 20, it's called scenic roadways and driveway permits. So where Thornell Road is a scenic road, it says no driveways should be permitted on scenic roads designated under the RSA unless permitted in accordance with these regulations. And there's a list of things. It says driveways on scenic roads shall meet or exceed all requirements of 8.2.4. So I don't know where they're asking for a waiver. If, you know, it says it must meet all these, so there might be, there's a couple other things, so they might want to look into those.
Would the applicant be exempt? And this is a question I don't know the answer to, so I'm going to ask Jen. Because it's a private road, is it exempt from a driveway permit?
You still have to get access permission onto the town road, but you are allowed to construct a driveway / private road, even though it is a scenic road. So if there is a stone wall there.
I thought the driveways were coming off of the
So
private
that would
way
be the
now
thing, the
after that.
conservation could go out and look, and like I said, if there's a stone wall they have to cut through, or within the right of way of the town, if there's any trees that have to be taken down, we'd have to look at that.
Yeah. I mean, it is limited to stone walls and trees,
Yeah,
but.
yeah, within the right of way the town owns.
Thank you. And just for clarification, I wasn't trying to say that they shouldn't follow the rules. It was more, or regulations for a driveway. I was just kind of wondering if our regs covered both driveways and private roads. And if it
I
doesn't,
believe it only specifies driveways, actually, but it would be,
it probably should cover private driveways.
yeah.
See, I've been on conservation too long. Any work that's done on a scenic road, we have to hold a public hearing and decide. Granted, we only have control over the right-of-way, but even if it's a road, a builder, a Unitil, any other company, we would still hold a public hearing just to make sure that we're following the statute.
Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you. What's your question?
I have a question for Mr. Quintel. Is there a way to address the concerns of the abutters as it relates to water supply? Is there just a matter of just going deeper with the new wells, or is there a way to gauge the, you know, the supply of the aquifer or that type of thing?
Don't really have a good answer for that, but wells that are drilled generally are independent from one another, provided they meet the setback requirement. And for the state requirements, a 75-foot radius. For residential purposes, that's what they figure is the minimum requirement for impacting other properties. So if someone was to build a septic system or have animals near a well, the state says you need to have at least 75 feet. So it would be drawing water within that 75 foot and for the purposes of supplying a single-family house. If they were going to add a well that is going to require more water coming out for a multifamily or some sort of commercial building that requires a lot more water, then the protective radius gets bigger. If there's more bedrooms in a house, over 4, then your well radius gets bigger.
Okay.
And so that's the protective zone that they think is around which will not impact anybody else of drawing water from within that area. Single-family homes, they generally between 400 and 600 gallons, 450 to 600 gallons a day is usually what the maximum is or what septic designs are designed for. But most homes only use a certain percentage of that.
Gotcha.
Maybe 30%, maybe 50%, it depends on the household. But that's what septic designs are designed for. So if you're drawing out for 400 to 600 gallons a day within a 75-foot radius, then you're not really impacting anybody beyond that, because that's what the requirement is for protecting that well.
Okay.
Drawing water from other entities
Yep.
that could impact that well. I don't know if that's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the 75-foot radius is that you don't have too many straws sucking out of the same
Yeah,
pool.
Good
And that the well radius has to be fully contained on the site, which is what they have proposed, and they would have to abide by.
Right, so if we were to overlap the protective radiuses, then there could be a possibility of one
Yeah.
taking
cause
the water
concern.
from the other one. So
Yeah.
that's why it's good to have it totally on the lot, unless you have an easement from an abutter.
Gotcha.
Or a well release form that's generally required as well. So
Okay.
I wouldn't think there would be any impacts of anybody, anything above that, but certainly it's a good question for the state if anybody has a concern. The state makes their rules. The rules that they have are based on statistics and real data. We don't make up the rules. I mean, it's like the town rules. You don't make them up. I'm sure you have come up with the rules for a good reason. And so obviously if there's questions about wells and water supplies, that probably is a better place to go than to ask me that, what do I know type of thing. So, but that's the best answer I can come up with for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah.
Sure, the only thing is you have to come up to the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What other developments have you done that have used wells?
Lots.
I've done a few in a number of towns. In this town recently, I've done some subdivisions for Mr. Fitzgerald, Chase Road, Curryville Road, 108,
Pond Street.
Peasley Crossing, Pond Street. I've done a few subdivisions in town, and obviously I had to meet town requirements as best I could. When I couldn't meet town requirements, I've asked for waivers and had good response. But that's the whole process of going through this whole review process with the town, is to get input, to come up with a design that works within your rules and regulations, and something that can make people who want to develop a piece of property, not only for themselves, but maybe for providing homes for other people, one way or another. That's what the rules are there for. And so it does protect the town for a certain degree, but you just cannot say no more subdivisions in town. It's not, you can't do that. But I'm on the Conservation Commission in my town, and I see things get developed in my town. It's a little bit of a conflict for me, but I just want to make sure that they're done according to rules and regulations. And being cognizant of not only the town rules, but the state rules as well are important. So that's where I come from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Are there any other questions, comments from the public? Anybody from the internet, Zoom world? No hands? Is there a decent amount of people on Zoom today? Or 5 or 6?
There's Barbara, there's Emily, and someone named Dee.
Not yours?
Probably my wife.
Okay. So we appreciate the information. Hopefully the applicant or their representation can take some feedback and make some potential changes, or maybe we'll see you again, maybe we won't.
Well, thank you for your time tonight, because it is very important for going through this process and trying to do it in a proper way, so we aren't going down different roads and spending a lot of different times. But I certainly will meet with Conservation and the Fire Department, and if we have to do site walks, we certainly will do that. It won't be within the next month or two, but it'll be sometime this year.
And just on behalf, and hopefully I'm speaking for the board, I do appreciate coming in and kind of, kicking the tires a little bit to iron out some of these details. So at least on your applicant's behalf, you're not spending a bunch of money and you come here and we hate it and you need to revise it, and then we're just arguing.
Well, we don't want to keep going back and forth. That happens.
Yeah, no, it's nice getting all this information up front. Thank you.
So we're going to switch over to board business. If you can leave if you want, unless you want to hang out with us.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening and everybody's questions and concerns. Greatly appreciated.
Okay, great.
Take care, gentlemen. Thank you.
Should I not have seconded that?
No, it's fine.
Before, we were supposed to wait to see if she wanted to consider stuff?
Nah, it's totally fine.
Okay.
So next on the agenda is acceptance of the meeting minutes of June 13th, 2023. So we would need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for June 13th, 2023, as written.
Second, this is Barbara.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marshon,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
and Mr. Moran.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Next is approval of the NEPR manifest for $49.52.
Motion to approve as stated.
Second, this is Barbara.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Ms. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
Mr. Marshon,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Moran.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. And next we have Invest New Hampshire update.
All right, give me just a second.
Uh-oh.
Not so fast, my friend.
Can we not turn the air conditioning on in this building?
It's
For what it's worth, I will be somewhat brief. And I'm gonna also share my screen so that Emily and Barbara are also able to see this. And anybody else that's on Zoom. So what you have that I'm handing out is, I want to stress, this is a draft. This is the draft of the Housing Master Plan chapter it's being funded through the Invest New Hampshire grant. At this point, all we have done with drafting of the master plan is putting in some of the existing data. I have not drafted anything like goals or any public engagement that we're going to get to and I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. I just want to give you guys a flavor of some of the information that I'm putting in here. It's going to get a little bit deeper of a dive because there's a little more we're getting. We just got some updated rental data information. And I'm probably going to make some of the graphics a little bit nicer, poppier, easier on the eyes. But you can peruse this as you will. I'm just going to sort of run through the table of contents for ease, but it does talk about sort of the background, introduction, what has Newton talked about as far as housing, what's the background on housing, what are some of the factors influencing housing on the local and regional levels, and also on the state and national factors, because it's a issue really everywhere. Then getting into some data snapshots, general housing data. We actually, because of the age-friendly program that my office is doing with the town of Newton to look at ways of having people be able to age better in their communities, we do have some really good housing data for some older adults and some opinions that we've gotten through that process. Some comments regarding short-term rentals. Bob and I were chatting about that before the meeting this evening. It does give an overview of the Planning Commission's Regional Housing Needs Assessment. That is really the foundational document that we're using for a bunch of towns' master plans, because that's where we've gotten the biggest source of data. I have started to do the deeper dive into your assessing data to give you the most up-to-date information. but trying to pull in a lot of different factors because housing is a very complicated topic. We're going to get into people's opinions, but having I'm going to say the foundation of what does the data say is really important when discussing housing with folks. We did start to pull in what have we heard from residents. You guys are really kind of ahead of the curve in that we've been doing a lot of outreach with your sort of master plan survey, some of the land use surveys, the age-friendly communities factors that are going on. So we've heard from a lot of people in Newton. The next step of this whole process is to actually hear from more people specifically about housing, because people have a lot of opinions about housing in their communities, what they want, what they don't want, what their own needs are, and what the needs of other folks are. So that will be sort of what we hear from residents. We've pulled in what we've already heard, but that will get beefed up as we work through this process. Part of the HOP grant is to do an audit of your local regulations to identify barriers and opportunities for the creation of new housing. And that does not mean that all barriers to housing are bad. I'm going to, just because the Conservation Commission folks are still here, note that putting houses in wetlands is typically not a good thing for the homeowner or for the wetlands. So that's a good barrier for housing development. Other barriers that sort of spin the gamut are things like infrastructure. Is there water? Is there sewer? Is there gas? Is there not the capability of having those facilities? Then we will get into recommendations. This will sort of come at the tail end of after we've done all the data that's in the master plan. We've done the public engagement, so we've then pit what's the data against what people want, against what the state law requirements are. What are the recommendations of what Newton may want to do moving forward with its housing options? That will then dovetail into the goals and actions plan. That is really the meat and potatoes of doing all of this. What can Newton as a town do to influence housing going forward in the community and sort of impacting in the region? So feel free to take a look at this. I'm happy to take any feedback. We don't need to do it tonight because I have just given it to you, but keep in mind this is a draft. This is our starting point, but I just wanted you to see how we have made progress on basically the bulk of your master plan. This master plan chapter, we may want to move some of the data and stuff to appendices, but it's going to be thicker than a lot of your other master plan chapters on the sheer fact that it is there to help support you for not only meeting your community goals, but also to identify your compliance with some of the state laws you have to be in compliance with. So I want to be able to give you the material that you need to do to help meet those two really ultimatums or goals. So I'm happy to rearrange it, but this will be a little bit of a thicker document. So if folks are good, I just want to sort of step into the first public engagement component that we're going to do, which is going to be a follow-up survey to get sort of the big picture, 10,000 foot level, what do people in Newton really think about housing? We have the benefit of having really good contact lists for people that have already engaged on other planning activities, so that will help. It'll be an online survey with some paper copies, but the idea will be a lot of promotion. You guys have gotten really good participation in surveys in the past. This will probably, because we have the budget to do so, push a little bit harder, and probably having it run maybe as early as August, but then into September to try and get people, not when they're on their summer vacation. So with that, I'm going to pull up just to give you a flavor of what that can look like, a survey that I'm actually running in Rye right now. You guys are a different community, so there will probably be different questions. There will probably be the possibility of including, it's called the visual preference survey. Those are questions where you put pictures out for people to respond to, and they can say if they like something, if they don't like it, they can write opinions about it. I think that might be a good thing to have in a Newton-specific survey, but I do want to run through the one in Rye just so you get an idea. We always talk about what's the background, who's paying for this survey, what's the purpose. putting in questions about demographic questions, how long have you lived in a community? Do you own a business? Do you own a home? Do you rent? That becomes a very important factor with housing. Then a lot of open-ended questions, just wanting to hear from people. Will your living situation, will your home meet your needs in 5, 10, 20 years? Because you'll probably be at a different life stage in 5, 10, or 20 years than you might currently be. Will your home still work for you? When you think of the future of housing in your community, what concerns you? Trying to really solicit a lot of comments from people. Some people will give me 3 words, some people won't write anything, but there's going to be a range, most likely, of people that want no building anywhere, anytime. They want nothing to change. There will also be the other side that say, we need more housing, build, build, build. And then there's the bulk of people that will be the middle of that bell curve. It's trying to honestly really get that bell curve, that what do most people feel? What are their concerns? What are their own experiences? What are their stories? That's sort of what I'm trying to get when I'm doing this kind of a survey, in a lot of different perspectives. Putting in some sort of prioritization. What's the priority for your community? Do you agree that your community provides affordable housing, not affordable housing? So some really easy multiple response questions, so you're not having to write if you don't want to. Trying to solicit and doing a little bit of education while doing the survey is also helpful. I try to keep it pretty minimal, but asking people, what is considered an affordable house in your community? Most people don't know. In the town of Rye, it is a house that can sell for no more than $448,000.
Probably doesn't
Let's just say
exist.
that doesn't exist in Rye. It is a little bit lower for Newton, but not significantly. So that's a little bit of an education piece of just getting people to guess, because most people don't know. What do you think it is? And then I can use that in the next stage of outreach to point out, like, this is what people thought it was, this is what it actually is. So we're using that as a little bit of a tool.
And just so since we have some additional people in the audience, this was all paid for through grants.
Yes, this is through the Invest New Hampshire, which is really COVID money that came from the federal government through the state, and RPC helped Newton apply for it. It was about $40,000 worth of grants, which honestly is more money than you guys have ever had to do really good master planning work, so we're trying to make the most of that and get as much feedback and as much going forward as we can. Talking about affordability, talking about goals, but one of the coolest things that we're able to do with a survey, but we can carry it forward too, is letting people put on a map, very simply, where do you think there should be more housing, no housing, or where would you be okay with some new housing or denser housing? We can modify those categories, but those are the basic ideas. You get a lot of comments. You get a lot of people that say, I don't want anything else built in my backyard, but you can build it over there.
In their backyard.
But it starts a conversation, and it can start like, well, maybe our zoning doesn't quite match what people are wanting or they're okay with, or maybe people just really don't want anything else, and then that's a different discussion. So it's meant to solicit at a very basic level, thumbs up or thumbs down.
There's a lot of red.
There is a lot of red in Rye's case because they're on the coast. It's really wet there. It floods a lot. It's also really high property values, so I'll let you infer what you will from that. But there are some green areas, so. And then we ask a few things like, demographics. What's your employment situation? What's your age? What neighborhood do you live in? That helps me sort of correlate the people that maybe don't want new housing in their backyard to those who are okay with it. We don't ask addresses, we ask neighborhoods. It's about a 1/4 mile radius so that I can't say, oh, that's, Joe, that's Sally, that's Tom. I can't point out who it is. And then we have a final, if you would like to receive more information, please sign up. It lets us do that continual contact. So I just wanted to share that so you have an idea of sort of where I think we can go. I would like to have maybe like 2 or 3 of the planning board meet with me maybe once, possibly twice, to sort of talk through the survey so that we can talk through some of like the survey questions itself, so I'm getting more direct feedback. I've done a lot of these, but I need your feedback for community specific, and have a sort of outreach plan of where's the flyer gonna get posted, you know, is there an event coming up in late August, early September that would be good to have people hand out postcards? Is there a spot at the transfer station where everybody's gonna be? Is Greenie Park the right place to do it? So I need a little bit more feedback. I know Newton fairly well, but you guys live here, so I need your feedback too.
I can help out with that.
Okay,
Can you
and
do
this
it
could be like a,
virtually?
it's,
No, you're meeting virtually.
the meeting, you could have one participant. If we're only doing 2 planning board members, it's not technically a quorum. And then it doesn't have to be noticed.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I will volunteer myself. Perfect.
I can set that up. And luckily, unlike the age-friendly community where our transfer station slip hander was out for several weeks, he's back at work, so we have somebody at the transfer station who just loves to give people information. And
Awesome.
Transfer
We just
stations
put up a
and
big
Facebook.
Poster with a QR board.
That's exactly what I do in most communities. I do a big poster with a
They
QR
can just
code.
take a picture of it as they drive in.
yeah, I usually put something large on the bulletin board downstairs as long as there's a QR code.
Yeah.
Old Home Day too, when we have that, we do a table there.
Yeah,
is
because
Old Home
that's the, is it
Ooh,
the
that's
second week?
perfect.
Right, second week in September.
Second week?
Okay. That'll be a perfect fit.
Sure.
Okay.
And whatever baseball day is at Greenie Park, I don't, that may have already come.
That already happened.
That
It
already
did?
happened.
Oh,
You just put a bunch of these little, I'll make them up
Usually the
for you,
fire
you put them in your
department
back
does
pocket, and everybody that walks up to you and goes, "Hi Dennis," you go,
Yeah,
I-
I can
yeah.
take a bunch to Old Home Day and start passing them.
Okay.
down
Can
the
I
pond.
actually request, since you volunteered, I think? Yes?
Hold on, depends.
Okay.
Yes, I volunteered.
Could I ask Tricia if she'd be willing to?
You can ask.
It'd be a 1 meeting. It's not a committee. It's just a 1 meeting because I think you know everybody and everything in town.
Okay.
Maybe sometime in probably late July.
Okay.
Okay.
You know the other thing, and I'm talking out of line here, maybe, do I need to stand up?
No.
You know the survey that you're talking about doing?
Barbara,
Hello.
I
No.
wanna hear.
This, I hope no one's listening. The survey that you're doing, and in order to get it out, for emergency management, I took our people that want to be on our alert, you know how I do that voicemail thing, and I posted that on our website, so it's user-friendly, they can just fill it in. I wonder if we could do the same thing on the planning board site, that could fill in the survey right on the site.
So it is an online survey, so it's really easy
Oh.
to embed.
So we just have to put the link there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's mainly online. I can do paper copies too. It just we generally don't get a lot of them, but we can do them.
Okay, we don't want to kill trees. Okay,
We'll,
thanks.
we'll keep it minimal, but yes, it is an online survey.
Compiling the data is a huge pain with the paper surface.
That too, but I'll do it. So that's where I am. Sorry. I'll at least ping a couple people to see if they will come meet with me for like an hour or so in late July. Is that fair?
I have a question. So is our survey going to be similar to the Rye one? Because I already saw something on there that confused me.
Yours will likely be somewhat similar to Rise, but it certainly does not, and nor should it be exactly the same. Some of the questions are really good questions because they're very open-ended. They solicit a lot of feedback, but Newton is a different place than Rye. I just wanted to show you an example of an active survey right now.
2 different animals.
Oh, yeah.
So
Why I live in Newton.
Thank you.
that's where I am. It'll probably really gear up with some of the housing stuff towards the end of the summer. I'll be working on your regulation audit over the summer, and then once we have done the survey, then we'll have the results. We'll do another public engagements, which will probably be a meeting here to present them, because that can be televised. People can participate on Zoom, and then get more feedback. And then we'll hopefully be able to wrap up the master plan, and you'll have the regulatory audits basically at the beginning of 2024.
How's the feedback been thus far?
For the survey I'm doing in
Yes.
Rye so far, we've probably gotten about 10% of the population of Rye that has responded.
10%, okay.
Yeah, when we did the master plan survey here a couple of years ago, we got, I think it was like 12%. It was a little higher probably with the adult population.
Not a very good conversion rate.
Yeah, we can do
I think we
better
could do
than
better
that.
than that.
You guys are cooler than Rye,
Yeah,
so.
we'll just bug people.
3%.
It's the second homes in Rye that are
True.
killing it.
By the way, assuming that all the members of the planning board did the age-friendly survey,
Yes.
Yep.
all you have to do is point your phone at the QR code on the sheet I put in your board packet.
Had it done before that.
Good man.
Take this with me. Is that it?
That is all I have.
I have one more thing. You are the abutter to CBI? Slum? Just for everybody's, you brought something up last hearing about the timber tax that they did not file. They took care of that within 24 hours.
Oh, the tree? Is that the trees?
They were on top of it, and I believe that the language was, we did not start off on the best foot, and ignorance is not an excuse. So they did resolve that.
And the pipe?
I'm not sure about the pipe, but if there's an issue, come back.
That's one for the Norman property, that's in current use too, so that's another step, he's gonna have to get all that land out of current use. There's taxes that have to be paid on that, so that's the assessors and the tax people who are gonna.
There's a few hurdles that they have to address, just a few. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so,
that's why Dennis said that he's got quite a bit of work, that he's not gonna be showing up next meeting.
Can I take a picture of that?
so I'd like to adjourn at 8:45. Thank you.
Thank you.